Welcome to Off the Page, the show where we talk with Colorado authors to get the story behind the story. I'm Stacy McKenzie, a librarian here at Mamie Dowd Eisenhower Public Library in Broomfield, and today we have a great show for you. A little bit later on, we'll be talking with Ingrid Pyka, but first I'm happy to have Claudia McAdam back with us. Hello, Claudia.
Hi, Stacy. Thank you for welcoming me back.
And we have all of your wonderful books, some in between what we talked about last time. But today we're going to talk about two specific books. But before we get started, I always like to ask a little introductory question of the authors. Who are some of your writing influences?
You know, I've had so many throughout the years, but I think what I'd like to talk to you about today is who influences me now.
Okay.
Because my career is not dissimilar from two other authors who I greatly admire, although they're far more successful than I. But Linda Sue Park and Jane Yolen both write books that span the picture book to young adult genres. And that's kind of what I do, and I enjoy their work and how they approach the different age groups for whom they write.
Let's talk about your books now. And I want to talk first about our Christmas book, Kristoff and the First Christmas Tree. When you visited us before, we talked about another Christmas book,
That's right.
The Christmas Tree Cried.
Yes.
Tell us about this new Christmas book.
This book is a legend of Saint Boniface. So I ask you, and I ask everybody who questions me about the book, did you ever wonder how we began the tradition of bringing evergreen trees into the house at Christmas time? Why do we cut down a tree and bring a dead tree into our house?
Right.
So there's a lot of legends about how that tradition started, but only one of them really traces back to a real live historical figure, and that's Saint Boniface in the early 8th century. And that's what this story is. So it takes a fictional character, the boy Kristoff, who accompanies the missionary priest Boniface through the German countryside in the year 722, and they encounter a group of pagans worshiping a sacred oak tree. And what Boniface does changes those men's hearts and begins the tradition of bringing evergreens into the home.
Wow, I think a lot of people have wondered about that.
It's an interesting story, and how the tradition really started, we're not sure. So my story is based part in fact and then part in tradition and legend.
And tell me about the illustrations of this book about St. Boniface.
The illustrations are beautiful, bold, and really colorful, and they're done by Dave Hill, who lives in Scotland. So Dave and I have never met. Our works were put together by our publisher, Paraclete Press, who published Kristoff and the First Christmas Tree. And Dave has interpreted my story through his own artistic lens, and it's really dynamic and beautiful what he's done.
And so that's kind of a lesson about publishing. Sometimes you write the story and someone else will take control of different elements, but it turned out wonderful in your case.
I'm very
right?
pleased,
Yes.
very pleased with it.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Let's talk about Mermaid's Gift, a very different book.
It is, and like the other book, Kristoff and the First Christmas Tree, it too is based on an ancient legend. The story is about a young fisherman on the Italian island of Burano. It's in the Venetian lagoon. The villagers, this is set hundreds of years ago, are experiencing a really cold winter. The sea has iced over. The fishermen can't go out to catch fish, and the people are starving. So Johnny, the fisherman, when the ice starts to break up and the waters become able to be navigated, he takes his little boat out to go fishing and has a horrible experience at sea and nearly drowns until a mermaid saves him and gives him a gift that he brings back to the island, and with the help of his fiancée Nicoletta, they use this gift to save their villagers. That's based part in fable and part in fact of how the lace-making industry on Burano began.
Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah.
What a great full circle kind of story.
It's very interesting, and in the back of the book there's an author's note where I recount the legend and the history of the lace-making industry.
These books are so different. I have got to know what inspires your storytelling vibe. Where do you get your ideas for stories and such different ones?
Well, you know, both of these stories have to do with legends, and in each case it was something that I read or something that I heard about the story that made me think, wow, wonder what really happened, and wouldn't kids and families enjoy a fictionalized version of this legend? And so that's what drew me to each of the stories, was that they were interesting, they were different, and in both cases I'm able to do something that's really important to me, and that is to reflect how characters can live virtuous lives. So in each of these stories, you can look at them as heroic stories, and I have discussion and activities guides that I write for these stories that help students investigate the cardinal virtues, for example, that go all the way back to Aristotle, prudence and justice, fortitude, and temperance, and how do these characters embody those virtues and live them out.
So really good life lessons in these stories.
It is. Today kids, their heroes are sports figures and reality stars and musicians, but are those people living virtuous lives? And if not, should you be modeling your life on theirs?
And at least be able to tell the difference between the
two.
To
be able to distinguish between
Clearly.
the two.
Sure. And Mermaid's Tale, again, such a different looking book. Tell me about the illustrations and the process with that as it was different from your Christmas book.
Tracy Van Wagener lives in New York City. She's a fabulous artist, and she again interpreted the story through her own artistic eyes, and I'm really pleased with the way it looks. It's got that fairy tale quality about it when in her paintings, and she on her website she's gone through with one of her blogs and meticulously detailed how she did the illustrations and came up with the ideas and all the research that she had to do into the lace making industry, for example, in order to authentically recreate the story in pictures.
And how did you hook up with her for the book?
Pelican Publishing, my publisher of this book, they bought the story from me. They had a connection with Tracy and offered her the job of illustrating this book, and I think it's a beautiful marriage.
Oh, you've done so well with the process. It's
Thank
wonderful. Let's talk about your website a little bit.
Right.
And you mentioned about the reading questions and the outlines for these books. Can they find that on your website?
Yes, that's a resource that I make available for free at my website for many of the books that I write. So teachers and librarians, parents and grandparents, they can request that material, and I'm happy to get it to them. And then there's discussion questions, there's vocabulary, there are crafts and activities like mazes, etc., that have to do with the respective books that the kids can do alone or with their teachers or parents.
And what else can we find when we visit your website?
For example, for the Christoph book, I offer a prayer of blessing for a Christmas tree. It's the last page of that book, and I've reproduced it in a format that I can send to people for free, that they can use to bless their Christmas tree if they'd like in their home at Christmas time.
And we have a copy of that card. This is the one here. And so they can contact you through your website and get this sent to them.
That's right. And also on my website, I list my appearances. So for the next 6-9 months, anywhere where I will be presenting the books or doing a book signing, etc., it's always listed on my website.
What a wonderful thing for you to do for people, to give them that. That's so special.
Well, thank you.
So I hope you get to send a lot of those out.
So do I.
You are such a prolific writer, and your books all look wonderful, and you've had a lot of luck and success, I would say, in the business. Claudia, what advice would you give to new writers? Maybe people who haven't even published yet, but especially those that are looking at doing children's work.
First of all, not to give up. I'll tell you a story. Just yesterday, I got a rejection for a manuscript that I sent out. It happens all the time.
You?
Wow, can you believe it? It happens all the time.
Okay.
And just because you're rejected by a publisher, for example, it doesn't mean your writing is horrible necessarily. It means it's not a good fit for that publisher. So I would say keep at it and keep submitting if you've got a finished product. If you're not to that stage yet, I would say for children's writers in particular to join the Society of Book Writers and Illustrators, Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, SCBWI. It's a great organization to belong to. Attend conferences, find a writer's critique group, read a lot, and practice your craft.
Wonderful. And how much does speaking to groups like you do, how much does that help you with your writing and with doing things like this, promotional things?
I love doing that. I speak at schools a lot, but I also speak to adult groups because they're very interested in how does a children's writer work. And they love being read to, too. So all of my books I have on a PowerPoint presentation so I can display the images on a big screen while I'm reading. So a whole room full of people can enjoy the illustrations along with the story. And I find it's really good to interact with people because they have questions about the books, or they say, I know a story, and they tell me their story. And it's just it's a growth experience for me and hopefully for them too.
So you have in your pocket, you've got a set type of presentation that you could do for anybody who would like to have you come and speak to their group?
I do, and not just a set presentation, but I can vary my presentation based on the audience. Is it kids? Is it adults? Families? Are they looking? Is it in a school, and are they looking to help strengthen the writing abilities of their students? Then we can talk about descriptive language and vivid verbs and those kinds of things that I try to incorporate in my books, and I have to help teach the students then how to do that in their own writing.
Oh, that's exciting.
It is
That's
fun.
marvelous. I know the answer to this question. Are you working on anything next?
Always have something I'm working on. I have some manuscripts that are out there. I have published, a publisher has published a young adult biblical historical fiction novel of mine, and I am shopping the sequel to it right now. So I have some picture book manuscripts out there, including the one that got rejected yesterday.
Yeah.
And I've actually just completed the screenplay for my YA historical fiction. So I'm hoping to move that in the motion picture / television production realm.
Oh, wow. And how does that work? Is it just like a book? You write it and shop it around?
I'm working with a media development company in Los Angeles. They're mentoring me through the process. And yes, then when it's completed, it's a matter of getting an agent or a manager or getting it in front of producers and looked at. So that's the next step.
Oh, that's fabulous. That's exciting.
It is fun.
I want to talk a little bit more about your process, though. Do you often have several works going on at once?
I can. I do. And my process isn't just writing either. A lot of it is the business aspect of writing, which doesn't so much appeal to creative people, but it's necessary. You have to set up your speaking engagements. You have to manage, with your publisher, where are books being sent and that type of thing. So I'm busy doing a lot of the business type things, but yes, I'm able to work on a couple of different projects at one time. One may be complete and I'm shopping it. I may be working on a midway through another one. I may be starting a new idea. So I kind of can bounce around a little bit.
Yeah, you have to. And by this time, you really know the process.
Hopefully, I'm learning. With each book, I learn more. So I'm hoping to be a better writer, a better marketer, a better person through my writing.
How important are reviews and awards? How important are those types of accolades that you might receive along the way?
They're nice, and I think every author hopes to get good reviews, would love to win awards for their books. I've won awards, and that's wonderful, but that's not why I do it. My greatest reward is touching someone's life. For example, with my biblical historical fiction book, Awakening, I was in a classroom talking about it. I have a big PowerPoint presentation, and at the end of the presentation, a 14-year-old boy came up to me and said, "Thank you for writing this book. It changed my life." Those are the moments. That's better than any a statue you can get or a plaque or a 5-star review. That's what matters.
That's wonderful. Congratulations
Thank
on
you.
that over everything else,
Thanks.
right?
Thanks. Yeah.
Claudia, thank you so much for being back on the show. We're going to probably pause for another year or so and have you back.
Thanks, Stacey.
Because you'll have a new crop of books to have with us. Thanks again for being on the show. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me here.
You bet.
It's been fun.
Join us after the break when we'll be talking with Ingrid Pyka.
Where are you?
I'm just a few minutes away.
What medications do you take?
I can help you if I have the information.
Seconds count.
What if you could provide us with life-saving information before an emergency?
Now you can.
It's free, private, and secure.
Visit smart911.com to create your safety profile.
Help us help you.
Welcome back to Off the Page. I'm so happy to have Ingrid Pyka with me today. Hi, Ingrid.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's always a
And
pleasure.
Ingrid and I have worked on a few things together, and so I'm really happy to have her here. And this is kind of a unique situation. I normally have authors on the show, but you actually published this book. Who is the author of this book?
So the author and illustrator is my mother, my
Yes.
very own mother.
And she couldn't be with us today, so you're here representing her.
Yeah.
But we have two other characters to talk about, Mish and Tish. Who do I have here?
That happens to be Mish. And if you look closely, you'll see that there is an identifying feature with an M that gives that clue that he's Mish.
Oh, let's see. Yeah, I see it right there. There's that M. Am I right? Is that
That's
the right
correct,
one?
yep.
And then we
Mhm.
have Tish, who also has that. So we're already starting to get an idea what types of values these books have. Can you explain to me a little bit about the core values of Mish and Tish books?
Yeah, when my mother first started up with these, it was more the intent to make something as simple as possible for children. She loves children, and she understands that the simplicity is so key on engaging them and letting them be involved. So the simplicity when she derived the characters was something that the kids can draw by themselves. And that in itself was actually the essence of cued me in why these are so special. My kids started drawing the characters, and my kids started creating the stories and sending them to Oma with the same rhythm and rhyme techniques that she herself had used. So it became let me put it this way. When my kids took the stack of stories that she had written and illustrated to school, came home and told me that the kids were skipping recess to be there and read, and then kindly asking that, when you're done with this book, can I please read it? I suddenly recognized there's something more about this than just a book my mother wrote for my children
Oh my gosh.
and her other grandchildren. So there was something there. And the core message essentially is really igniting the creativity in children and giving them the confidence to trust in their thoughts and in their creativity.
Give me a little information. We'll step back a little bit about your backstory and your mom's backstory. You were not born in this country. Give me a
I
little
actually
information.
was.
Oh, you were. Okay.
My parents grew up in Germany, and they grew up in World War II Germany, going through a lot of difficult times, and that itself is another story that,
Sure.
as an author, at some point I will be releasing that story.
Oh,
'cause
that's
it's
exciting.
really exciting. It'll be a screenplay most likely. But when they did come to the United States after the war, they embodied that learning and working hard upon themselves and engaging on any opportunity that's available. And that's really what all the stories are about, is finding the opportunities that are out there and recognizing that those are oftentimes solutions to something that you need to try to solve yourself. So that's where these books, this is the first, but she'd written about 10 of these.
Okay.
And in each one, it's the same concept. What is it that Mish and Tish have in front of them, and what are some of the options, or what are some of the solutions that they're coming up with to resolve that and still have fun?
In addition to creativity, there is a theme of literacy in the books, and of course librarians love that. Talk to me about that and how some of the books maybe speak to that differently than others.
When we first started talking about publishing Mish and Tish, which actually she wrote these over 30 years ago.
Okay.
So when we first were thinking of publishing, there are so many children's books and there's so many wonderful, how do we differentiate this from any of the others that are out there? And I recognized again, based on how do we ignite the children to do what they want? So it's based on children writing their own stories. And just as my children had done when they took Mish and Tish into character and then created their own little plots and what happens here and there, this is an opportunity where we want, when we're working with students in schools and we're going to the hospitals and volunteering there, we want the children to create their own ideas. And this is just a little stepping stone on how to do that, just getting that little additional help and recognizing, hey, I can write a story. And we want children to write their stories and imagine what if a child is, before even they graduate from the elementary school, they have a book published with their name on the bottom as the author or even as the illustrator. Just imagine what that would be like for the rest of their life, having that foundation to build upon.
They'll always remember that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the simplicity here is so refreshing, but also seems to be the perfect vehicle for that.
It is the engaging methods. When suddenly, like I said, back to the children in the school, when my daughter brings home a page and a half of children saying, "Yes, we want more books. Please publish these." It's giving us an idea and the simplicity. And as I'm working with children and we're creating the little puppets for them to do, and then they're engaging the different kinds of learning, whether it be the kinesthetic, whether it be the auditory or the vision. This incorporates all of them. And in this book, where all they're wanting to do is find out, well, how else can I use to brush my hair? And they're coming up with pine cones and all that. When I'm working with kids in the jamborees, all of a sudden I have kids coming up with ideas I never would have thought about. Splinters of wood. In the dungeons, they had those big
Maces? Yeah.
Is that the ones with the ball with the spikes coming? A child came up with that thought.
Wow.
Who would have come up with that? And it's their creativity.
So you do events around. I remember you did an event at Children's Hospital.
Yeah.
Tell me about what happens at these events with Mish and Tish.
It depends on what the level is of the jamborees that we do. When we're working in a classroom, there are different steps that we have available based on their age group and their ability. We start with the storytelling. What's a plot? What's a story? I had one little boy I was working with, and all of a sudden we were just talking about in a bathroom getting ready in the morning, and what's special about the bathtub? Well, it has a magic cloud over it. What a cool idea.
Yeah.
That's copyrighted to him, by the way.
Oh, good, good. No, how great.
It was such a
though.
wonderful idea. And then going on to the next steps of understanding what rhythm is, and they recognizing that words can be music, and so that they understand the cadence into rhyming and just what the poetry is, and understanding how words fit together and cue together and tying it all together. One of my favorite stories, I was in a classroom, and all we wanted to do were to come up with 3 initial story or words, just words. What did Mish and Tish do in the morning? And kids are raising their hand here and they're raising their hand there and sharing, brushing their teeth, getting dressed, picking up their ball, playing with their dog. And they had written these down ahead of time. Well, I noticed there was a little boy on the corner, and he had been busily writing in the beginning, but he was very quiet when it came to sharing time. I kind of got him going and finally asked, what is it? No, these are dumb ideas. I can't share these. I guess, come on, it can't be any worse than brushing your teeth, or it can't be, it's a simple, it's an easy thing. There's no wrong here. So finally he did share his 3 words. And Stacy, I had to tell you, I do not remember what those 3 words were. Because as soon as he shared them, that little 3rd grader literally dove under his desk in shame.
Oh.
He didn't have the confidence. By the end of that session, when we were working through and delivering the rhythm and delivering the rhyme, that same little boy stood up and shared his little couplet, and he did not dive under his desk, and he was proud. That's what this is all about.
Oh my gosh, that's a wonderful story. I'm tearing up just thinking
We
about
love
it.
it.
Because that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
That's what it is all about. And we don't know what was going on with that little boy, but for that
Exactly.
time with Mish and Tish, he came out of his shell.
Yeah, and what can he do in the future?
Let's move on. Tell me about a website. You have a website for Mish and Tish?
Yeah.
And what can we find when we go there?
When we go to the website, and we are still delivering it right now, it tells a little bit about the jamborees that we offer. It tells a little bit about, again, what the core message is in developing the confidence into believing in your creativity. It talks about some of the examples that we have, and we're in the process of building what I call it, kind of like a bulletin board. That on this bulletin board, where kids can upload their stories and their pictures and share and have that recognition in a world of where most of them are kind of like, oh, I'm too shy or whichever, but it's an opportunity for them to be recognized and to share it with their parents and their grandparents and their teachers and their friends, and just make that an opportunity. So we want kids to share.
It's building confidence, and who knows what they can do once they have
I was just reading in a recent Washington Post article how nowadays it's so difficult for our youth as they're growing up to come up with their own solutions, because as parents we've been so protective and wanting to give them the best. We haven't really given them the utmost ability to stand on their own. And this is also, again, driving towards that for kids to come up with their own solutions, whether it be what else can you use as a hairbrush,
Yes.
or how am I going to position myself in the world of the future to succeed?
Oh my goodness. And the creativity and the forethought and the planning, that all leads to that, and that's what these books
Yeah.
also teach.
Yeah.
That's exciting. You brought some other resources that you share with teachers and other educators.
We do, yeah.
It's so nice because teachers don't have to come up with their own things to go with this. You actually are providing them, and we have some guys sticking up. Tell me about what we've got here.
So little Tish and little Mish here, generally how we started out, when we have a quick storytime jamboree, again, kids love doing things and making fun crafts and so forth. And when they have these created together, like we have these little kits and packets of the puppets to make and glue together. They're very simplistic, they're very easy, but it gives them something to work with as they're creating the story. So for example, in the jamboree, when we do just a quick story jamboree, like when we're at the Children's Hospital to give them something else to do, they make a quick puppet and then they tell me something that's happening and I draw it quickly on a storyboard, and then they can take their puppets that they just made and walk them through it. So it engages it in their mind that, hey, I just made the story. This is fun. I like writing. And now as the pictures, it's easy to translate that then into text. And it's a hop, skip, and a jump for them, and they didn't even realize what they just did.
And the fact that you provide these and you've made them ahead of time for people and teachers and parents and anybody interested in bringing this as a program into their organization, that's fabulous. That's marvelous.
We appreciate all the volunteers that help us with this as well. It's been phenomenal how many people are stepping up to help either at the events that we're putting on or even doing the behind the scenes and cutting out these.
Cutting out all those
them
pieces
out,
and parts.
We would love to have a die cut, just get it done.
Wouldn't that be nice? Oh yeah, maybe someday.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, we're
you
always
can
looking
get
for
those.
resources.
Wonderful. Just like libraries.
Yes,
Resources.
absolutely.
Now, we talk about how much the children are learning through Mish and Tish, but have you learned anything along the way that you have been promoting this book?
I have learned so much, and I've had many amazing opportunities developing, and then also the lessons learned. For one thing, just do it. We had been putting this off for so long. When my mother first wrote this book, again, decades ago, she did the same thing where she submitted it to a publishing and was just devastated when it wasn't taken. You know, it's like, well, this is not worth anything. But it's so much about continuing to try. It has to be the right fit and the right time. And how many times did we have the J.K. Rowlings that submitted their work, even the Dr. Seuss's, the many, many submissions that they made before they actually found that right spot and were published. And if you know what, if in this case timing was an issue because I wanted to get it out so that my parents could see it and recognize that. So I decided, you know what? Why don't I do this by myself? And so learning the publishing process and then getting all the resources put together, and it made so many more relationships, amazing relationships, even to the point of where being awarded first place in some of the categories is just amazing. That in itself opened more doors.
Right.
The doors that open. Lessons learned, many. It's not as easy as it may seem.
Is that true?
That is true. And even if we're talking about entrepreneurs or writing the book or even publishing, and then obviously the marketing. There are many components, and it's tough.
I just love the whole push behind these books and the core messages and everything, and it's just uplifting to hear about Mish and Tish. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
I'd like to thank today's authors and publishers that were on the show. Thank you to Claudia McAdam and also to Ingrid Pyka. Check your local libraries for the books that we've talked about on today's show, and join us for more next time on Off the Page.